Welcome to the Sacred Rebels podcast. This is your host, Tay.
And co-host Amy.
We're the podcast that fearlessly dives into the depths of holistic healing. Join us as we empower you to embrace your divine journey, confront sexual trauma, conquer addictions, and rise with confidence with life after trauma. It's time to unlock the sacred rebel within and enter a transformative path to self-discovery and healing.
We are here to trigger you. By shattering stigmas and questioning societal norms, join us as we explore diverse stories of men and women showcasing that there's not one way to heal and the importance of community. Together, we will navigate the evolving human experience, embracing paths to growth and understanding. Let's heal, baby!
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Sacred Rebels. We're so excited to have another male guest on tonight. This season was all about bringing male guests, so we're super excited to have Bruce King here. He is a activist, advocate, and public speaker in the Maine area. He has a powerful story about his recovery and incarceration, and now he does a lot of incredible things, service work and stuff like that in the area. So we met on ceremony weekend. It was a ceremony weekend for Bufo, and I got to sit and chat with his mom for that hour and a half, and she was one of the coolest women I've ever met, and she convinced me to ask Bruce to come on, and we felt honored. I was like, absolutely, we would love to have him on. So here he is. We actually pulled a card for him because he didn't have a card deck. So Aim pulled a card for him. Aim's going to read it for us after we do our big deep breath.
We'll place one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. We're going to expel all the energy out. Just let it go. Big inhale in through the nose. Fill up, open the mind, and then just let it in, settle into the message. And so the card that I picked is called the Soul Triangle, Mystical Soul-Led Harmony. A triangle between might, mercy, and harmony. Combining these forces to find a way through may not always be easy, but will produce soul growth. And as the soul grows, the seas calm and the problems are handled with ease.
As the soul
And
grows.
it says, guidance, you're in the worlds of mystical connections here, the worlds of the lords and the karma and the lords of peace. And your holy guardian angel, these forces are presenting you with a choice, a way forward that is soul-led. It may not be easy, but you'll know what must be done. Maintain a sense of magic.
That's so beautiful.
No, I'm into that. Especially with some stuff that's been happening the last couple of days. So yeah, that's really relevant. It's cool.
Love that. Well, explain to us, if you will, what that means to you. What's some magic in your life that's been happening lately?
Yeah, I mean, since that weekend where I met you, there's just been I've just really been it's been a summer of trying to heal, like just recognizing that I've gone way, way off my path. I hadn't really I hadn't engaged any kind of like active recovery work in like 7 years. Because I'd been working a lot and I had my daughter. So over the summer, I've kind of like re-engaged all sorts of like really active attempts to kind of get reconnected with kind of like just bigger energies and concepts and things like that. Um, yeah, and definitely have been doing journeying of different types, of many different types. So yeah, and yeah, after that weekend, um, after that journey, it brought up a lot of stuff. Like it brought, that week that it was just like it was really raw and it was kind of uncomfortable.
Disruptor. It's a
Yeah,
disruptor for sure.
yeah, big time. And so I recognized that I needed to confront all the stuff that had kind of like that weekend was really about like a fear of death that I'd been holding. I'll talk a little bit about that. That had really come up when I had served 3.5 years in federal prison when I was in my 20s, and all of a sudden this huge fear of death like showed up and like had me by the throat for like weeks. And then it went away for a while, and then it would come back every 7 years or so. So something about the 7 years or whatever. But it's been showing up a lot in the last like 5 years maybe. And so that Bufo weekend was really about like getting rid of that, and it got rid of that. Like it, I mean, not 100%, like it's still a little bit there, but it really it shook a lot of that free. But then all of a sudden there was all this other stuff that kind of like showed up, and I was like, oh man, okay, like what do I have to deal with now? So I went on another retreat actually only a few weeks after that, of a different healing modality essentially. And that brought me face to face with a lot of different things that I was carrying. And it kind of started this process of me looking at my attachments and my relationships and what those look like.
Mm.
Yeah, like a big evolution. I know this is still kind of vague, but trying to be forthcoming and vague at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And then last week, through my job in a way, but not completely through my job, but I went on on like a 3-day workshop that was using the Gestalt method in somatic healing.
What's
And
that?
so it's a modality of I guess psychotherapy.
Okay.
Gestalt essentially is um translates as a German word. There's no perfect translation for it, but it it loosely translates to the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And so there's all these subcategories that can be utilized and adapted. So are your listeners familiar with IFS?
Yes.
Yes.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say it sounds similar to IFS integrate like integrating all the parts and pieces and
Yeah, so that's definitely something like Gestalt is like the umbrella kind of that is my
Mm-hmm.
understanding, and then there's all these different modalities that kind of come from it, but also aren't mutually exclusive, but they can be.
Okay.
So like IFS can be like a way to interpret uh Gestalt, and then like there's a lot like art therapy can be part of Gestalt, and
Oh, so cool.
yeah, it's really wide open, and it's really well respected, but there aren't a ton of practitioners. But it was just 3 days of like doing some pretty interesting stuff. Like it was really body work, but it was really powerful. Like, you know, everything from like feeling your body as an animal and what does that feel like? And then like, howling
Yeah,
to
getting primal. We say it all the
yeah,
time. There's something about getting primal, like
yeah,
just raging out and acting
yeah,
like a fucking animal, screaming like a
yeah,
feral animal, and
yeah.
breath work. Like there's something so primal about it.
yeah. I mean,
And
without
somatic just touching and tapping and
that
shaking
too.
and yeah, that's we naturally like when you
Mhm.
get anxiety, like think about what you're doing naturally that your body will create. You start shaking your leg.
Hmm.
People don't realize that when they have a knee shaking habit, that that's their body doing somatic healing on themselves with the energy of their body. So if
Yeah.
that's something your body naturally does, you should lean into that. You should shake both your legs and shake your arms and shake
Get
your
it out.
body because your body's showing you that that's a way it wants to move the energy.
Yeah.
That's almost exactly what I would say this 3-day thing was. It
Yeah.
was like, but it was really masterfully held. Like the
Love
doctor that was,
that. That's
yeah,
so
the doctor
cool.
that was holding it was like really amazing. Like he would come and be like, he'd be like, "Where's the energy in your body?" And he'd put his like finger in your back, and he'd just be like right there. And then all of a sudden it would start to move and just emotional release. Like,
Yep.
I mean, just so much
You'll have
energy.
to give us the information so we can link it because that sounds incredible. Sounds like a great resource for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'd encourage just about anybody to explore it. But from that came up a lot of stuff as well, so
Hmm.
when you peel it back, you never know what you're going to find. And so this stuff is not to be entered into lightly, definitely making sure that there's supports and avenues. And
Yes, we
I
say
found
that
my
all the time. It's so
good.
extremely important.
Yeah, yeah,
Especially for our people who are in sobriety, we say like at least like a few years abstinent. Like you have to do like personally, I believe that you should be like comfortable in your abstinence before you decide to venture off in any of these other like plant medicines, like
Mhm.
hallucinogenics, anything like that. Like it's not something to be taken lightly. And like you said, the support network, you have to have a support network because shit just comes and comes and comes, and you're like, oh God, opening up a can of worms in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting into a habit of these practices that he's talking about, if you're newly in recovery, or,
Yeah,
we talked about this, the somatic energy and building a strong foundation in other tools before you're going to go that path, which I'm
absolutely.
sure, I don't, we'll get there, right? The beginning part of your story, how long you were sober, maybe a little bit about, what got you here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll get into that for sure. I guess just continuing to speak to the card before I
Yeah,
go
yeah.
far back, but I mean a lot of this shows up in the past, but one thing that just has really come up from all of this recently has been around my attachment style. And I had no idea. I just really started learning about it. Like I learned about it very loosely, but this uh this Gestalt retreat really like brought something up, and I just started like going down the rabbit hole, and it wasn't even named there, but I started like doing research and started reading. I'm like, oh my God, like I am like textbook um anxiously attached.
I'm anxious avoidant. When we were going through my EMDR therapy, my therapist is like, you are 100% anxious avoidant. Like that's why me and my husband like weren't meeting in the middle, and there was so much friction, and I was just like, "Ugh." Like every time I would get anxious, I would just avoid every single type of confrontation or any type of conversation that needed to be had. Like, nope, I'm out. Like I'm a runner. Like I'll just avoid, avoid, avoid.
I'm the opposite. I will go full on. Like I'm rare for for a man apparently. Like there aren't a lot of us, so I get to suffer the slings of everybody. It's pretty awesome, let me tell you. But yeah, so I've been really going down that rabbit hole, and then through that, like it made me so uncomfortable that I started like finding like all these meditations. This has all happened, mind you, in the last like 5 days, where it's just been really rapid fire kind of. And
I love that though. No time to waste. You're just
I
on it.
mean, it's more that I'm just so uncomfortable right now. Like
Yeah.
I'm so uncomfortable that it's like there's really not much of a choice. Like otherwise I just wake up in the middle of the night and I'm doing nothing with it. But then I found that one of my friends suggested ecstatic breathing, which I just discovered. I know y'all do breath work. Yeah, I
I don't
mean,
think I've heard of ecstatic breathing. I've heard of ecstatic dance.
are you
What is
familiar?
the breath?
Yeah, can you explain that to
Uh,
us?
it's like I mean it's like a or so it's
Oh,
very
sounds like what Cassidy was doing with us. I feel like the or was it through the nose or is it all through the mouth?
it's through the mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Into the
it's the,
into the stomach, into the
yeah,
chest.
that's our
Yeah.
breath.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the same. I thought it was the same. So it's dopamine breath is like the breath that we call it, but it's a somatic. It's also somatic breath. But
It's the
it's three
hardest I've
parts. It's
tried.
Yes.
It's a full body trip.
yes.
Yes.
It's like the minutes
Especially
after
if
you
you've done
wake up after
bufo.
Bufo. Yes.
Yes, like you can reactivate because your brain's already been there. So that's your
Um,
brain's natural DMT. That's how you access your brain's natural DMT.
that's what I've been doing the past 2 days. So that this is really
Yes.
live for me right now. And I
Yep.
was, oh my gosh, I feel like this has to be illegal. Like I could not believe it. And so this is my second day into that. And so
That's
that's
why
I
we
did.
preach it. We say it all the time. You can get
yeah,
high on your own supply.
Yeah, Biggie had it
absolutely.
wrong. Biggie had it wrong.
Yeah.
But I was funny because I actually did a private breathwork session. That's what I mainly do.
Yeah, that's right. That's what you do, right?
And this kid like came, and he's like cousin came, and it was the same. Like it was like that first experience, right? Everyone's like first
Holy
time when
shit.
you like, holy shit, I didn't know that my body could do that or like feel that way, or I could feel so much, because you just feel so deeply, which can be really intense because especially people with addiction, we've run from our feelings, and a lot of us can logically rationalize our feelings and think our way out of our feelings and think that we've felt them. but it's
Yeah.
bullshit. Until you actually sit in your shit and sit in your feelings, you're like, oh
Oh.
God, what is how?
Yeah.
And it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah,
But
no, it's been wild. It's really in my body now, and like
yeah,
all this stuff is coming forward. And so, in order to deal with that stuff coming up, I started like doing like Joe Dispenza,
Oh,
yeah.
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I like his, or I don't even know if that's how you say his name, but when I got some of his guided meditations and was doing one. I've been doing the series of four, and I did the final one this morning after I did my breath work. And there's this way that he kind of caps it, where he's like, you know, someone will show up, like ask for someone or something to show up in your world today to let you know that there is a great connection to something bigger than that. And that's the way he ends it. And so today I went to my first meeting in 7 years. Like I've
Wow.
been in a very long time. And I don't know, I felt like the need to go, and I like scrambled
Yeah.
out the door. And I won't say who it was because obviously anonymity, but I go in there, I sit down, and then like 2 minutes in the meeting, somebody walks in who, like, as I said, I can't say who it is, but it was like, oh my gosh, like this can't just
Meant
be.
to be.
Yeah, it was, and I had no idea this person was in the program or anything like that. Like I said, I've been totally disconnected. I've been messing up my own life in like a lot of ways the last bunch of years or whatever. So last 7 years, just really focusing on being a dad, which sounds great, but not really when you're kind of not really taking care of yourself. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I mean, so that card, ooh, it's quite a rabbit hole, but that's what my last month, you know month or and a half maybe, but not even, like the last month has been just like a lot of doing the work, and then the pain that comes up, and then the work that and then a mild relief, but then more work, more work, more work. And once you open those floodgates, like I don't know, I don't know that there's relief in sight, but I feel like now it's going. So
There
it's
is, I
time to it's time.
promise.
when I used to speak in AA meetings, and I've actually been saying this because it's so funny you say that, we're relief seeking missiles. Like that's what I am. Like I am just like constantly out here trying to like
Seek
seek
relief.
relief from like everything
Anything.
that, well, just everything that's happening, right? Instead of just sitting with it,
Mm, yeah, I
right?
mean, I still am. I'm still trying to,
We
you
just
know,
gotta sit with it. We gotta just fucking, because
uh,
the
You're like,
relief comes with sitting in it. Because when we're out, like, seeking the relief and trying to do these things, we're looking outside of ourselves, and the answers are inside of ourselves. And that's what breathwork teaches us. That's what the medicine teaches us, that the answers are in us.
mm-hmm.
They're not outside of us. And we're constantly, that's what we've been taught, is to look outside of us. But when we sit in it, and we, do these uncomfortable practices, it unveils, it opens us up to like sit a little bit deeper with ourselves. And when we, when we're out there, it's in us,
Yeah.
it's in you.
And life's always going to be lifing. I don't think there's ever going to be a perfect life where you're not going to like go through some shit, or some shit's not going to come up that's going to trigger you, or you're going to be like, "Oh, like that doesn't feel good. Like what's happened?" Like it's never going to be perfect, but you just now you have these tools and you know how to better handle them, manage them, seek that seek that type of relief
yeah. I
until
mean,
till more shit hits the fan.
well, I tell you, I mean, if I could, and the more I dig into it, the more I hear that there is you don't get rid of your attachment style,
No.
and I think this is really it. I think the attachment style is the linchpin for me of all of my discomfort. Like,
Mm.
and you know, it's always going to be there. Like it will address, like, you do enough work and you can get close to being a secure, but
Mm-hmm.
if one of the other ones are in you, it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I'm still avoidant sometimes. Like, it'll take me weeks to have a hard conversation, but I'll have it. But, like, it'll take me weeks to be like, actually, this, whatever it may be.
sure. No,
But it's
it's
the awareness. and you do the work. And
Yeah.
like a lot of people are just walking around not even knowing this shit because they don't want to do the uncomfortable things. And now you're learning and you have the awareness, and that's it. We just like give
Yeah.
ourselves grace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'll give myself some grace. As I said, like you caught me on a night where I'm deep in it, you know.
Yeah,
Like
good.
I'd be like, it's funny that, maybe that's part of this whole thing is just that
Yup.
the night that we connect is like 2 days into the breath work and a month into like just, uncovering so much
Deep
shit.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Raw and vulnerable and exposed. That's our favorite.
There you go. There you
It
go.
is.
How we do it. So,
The universe
yeah.
does everything exactly how it was supposed to. Even in just that little bit that you've shared, it's like you did the bufo, then this other thing just
Yeah, like
happened
we
to
met
fall
you
on
for
your
a
plate.
reason. Like I
Mm.
believe you came there that day for a reason. Someone's gonna find this podcast, seek you out. Like it was everything's connected, right? Like just talking to your mom for the hour and a half, like I was just like, holy shit, so much wisdom and knowledge and empowerment. Like I was just like, all right, sold. Like we're gonna ask Bruce to be on the podcast. She's like, yeah, you really should.
Yeah. No, she's great. She's great. I mean, but a lot of this attachment stuff has to do with, how we developed together as a unit too.
Mm.
We've got our work cut out for us too. You know, she is wonderful, and I'm like in a reckoning there where it's like, okay, you really got to look at this, this relationship that you have with your mom and stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. So
Yeah, it seems like you guys are very close. It seems like I love that though. Like I want my kids to always be that close to me. Like I always want to be very involved. Like I think that this society has kind of gotten away from those like family values and family traditions of like sticking together as a family longer. It's like, "Oh, your kid turns 18, get out."
yeah.
It's like I don't want that. Like if my kid wants to stay home till he's 30, I'm gonna be like, "Go ahead, pay me rent, but you're gonna go ahead."
No, totally. I mean, I guess that's a good place to start if we want to talk about
Absolutely.
like how I got here, Yeah, so I grew up as a Mexican American in like the whitest state in the country, you know, in a very small town. And I think what's more significant than that is so my mother married my father, who's from up here, when he was down in Mexico studying Spanish after having served. He was going to get drafted around Vietnam, and so he enlisted, did his service, and then at the time nobody was using GI Bill to like go to grad school really, but he had already done college, so he decided to go to Mexico to study Spanish with his GI Bill, and that's where he met my mom. you know they got married, moved up here. She's been pissed off ever since, kind of thing. I say that, but also with some level of truth is that it was a really hard adjustment for her. Like, she came from it's a big city in Mexico now, but it used to be a really small little village.
Yeah, we were talking about it. She came here, knew no one, didn't know English.
That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. And so,
incredible.
yeah, I mean, incredible, but really painful for her, you know
Yeah,
what I mean? And so,
isolating, very
yeah, the
isolating.
family in Mexico is very, very close. Her sisters and my cousins, like they still see each other pretty regularly. Like when I was down there growing up, because I would spend a lot of time down there in the summers and stuff, you know, they still had siestas at that point. They don't really have them these days, 2 hours out of the day where just everything shuts down and huge families all go to abuela's house and just eat and connect. And yeah, and the kids stay in the house until they get married. It's
Yeah, I
it's
love that.
yeah, I mean
I
it's a really
really
strong
do.
structure. But that was before kind of we created an economy where there are jobs all over the country. So, in Mexico it's true now. Like my cousins used to all live in the same town. Now they're kind of dispersed throughout the country. Because that's the way that the economy has kind of evolved. And in that it's kind of separated families. It's much harder to find, you go where there's work, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your mom's going to go where there's work to where your work is and things like that. So you've seen that kind of breakup even there, but you definitely have seen it here in the United States and it hasn't been valued. So yeah, she had a hard time adjusting up here. And so she just poured everything into me. Like I kind of like me, like she kind of learned English at the same time I was learning to speak. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like kind of the two of us against the world. But it also, for me, what I'm realizing is that it created a very dangerous worldview in that I constantly could feel her stress. And
mm.
she was constantly like, kind of using me as a distraction
Like
to feel
codependent
comfort.
in a
Yeah,
way.
yeah. And so there was a codependency, and that codependency really has kind of, shown up in relationships that I've had, and some struggles that I've had there. So this is me disclosing that to everybody on the internet.
Hey,
And
no shame, no shame.
yeah, no, I mean, if there's one thing about me and about her, which I'm sure you found out, is that we're open books.
Yep.
This is kind of how we function in the world. But yeah, so I had a really hard time when I was growing up, just internally. Like I dealt with a lot of depression, a lot of um just feeling alienated. And then I grew up and I found punk rock and I found skateboarding and just threw myself into that culture. And then my parents moved back to Mexico actually when I graduated high school. So I really didn't know what I was going to do, but I had some money saved for college. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go to Ithaca College. Why not? And so I went because it was better than just not going anywhere. And my parents were moving, so couldn't stay there. And so I went to college and I got quite a drinking habit, quite a drugging habit. It got really depressed and yeah, I ended up not finishing. I ended up owing just one semester, even though I was there for 4 years, because I never handed in papers. Like I loved my studies, like I loved the conversations, but I never did any work. I
Mm.
I couldn't get work done. So I ended up staying in Ithaca for a few years. It's such an awesome town. It's probably my favorite town in the
Where is
entire.
that?
It's upstate New York,
Okay.
about an hour south of Syracuse, so 45 minutes north of Binghamton, so smack dab in the middle on Cayuga in terms of the Finger Lakes. Um, so yeah, it was an amazing place. But I at that point I started DJing. I became like a breakbeat DJ, so I was really part of the whole electronic music scene, which was both awesome and gave me a lot of stuff that was very readily available.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about me is that I'm an extrovert in terms of how I get my energy, but I'm very like shy and anxious and things like that. So I needed to be out and about, but I hated talking to people. And so I was like, oh, okay, if I DJ, I can be out in public and I can be doing things. If I bartend, I can do that and I don't have to talk to anybody. So that's what I did and just really dove into that. And but yeah, the depression just got worse and worse. I tried to move. I tried the geographical remedy and moved out to California for like a couple of months and couldn't get my feet under me. And then I ended up moving back to Maine. My folks had actually moved back to the country because it just didn't really work out in Mexico. There was a whole bunch of geopolitical stuff that had to do that I won't get into. But it got pretty nasty down there. And my parents were dealing with their own struggles that I will respect them and not going into those. But yeah, they dealt with some really heavy stuff, and that stuff impacted me too. So when I came back to Maine, I couldn't really hold down a job. I didn't have my college degree because I had left, too early to finish that. Whole mess. And so I connected with old friends who I'd known through punk rock, because we used to go to shows, growing up, and some of them have gotten involved with, some less than savvy people. I'd say most of the people that I connected with in punk were incredibly positive, and a lot of them I'm still in touch with actively to this day. In a lot of ways, like I feel closer to them than I do most of my classmates and things like that. But yeah, I found myself dabbling in substances and I knew people in Maine because I'd grown up here. And so some Boston friends had, it made sense for us to move product up here together. And so that's what we did. I got really into cocaine and started distributing cocaine, and then just my habit got really out of hand. And I was using opioids when I was able to. It wasn't super easy to get my hands on it, but that was how I would come down. They weren't as readily available. They hadn't really flooded. They were
Mm,
starting to flood at that point, but yeah, it was still pretty hard to get it without a really good connection. But it was up and down, up and down, up and down, and doing all that. And then I just got to this point where I just couldn't take it anymore, and went out and purchased a firearm with the intention of taking my life within 24 hours.
wow.
Um, yeah, I mean, and that was the firearm that was going to do it. Like it was no question about it. And went out, had a really long night, and ended up sleeping much later than I'd expected, but I probably would have taken my life earlier. But that afternoon, I hear a knock on the door, and I'm like, oh shit, like what is this? I'm half asleep when it's like 2 in the afternoon, but I'm still half asleep. Bloated in my underwear, and I figure it's either friends or somebody who wants to buy off me. And they're like, open up, police. And I'm like,
Oh shit.
yeah, I'm like, okay, someone's fucking with me, like whatever. So
Yeah.
like, as I'm walking down the stairs, like looking like, fat Elvis at that point, like the door gets kicked in, and I just get swarmed by several agents and officers or whatnot.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was terrifying because I just never like I never thought it was going to come to that. Like you
Yeah.
just when you're in it, you just
You
figure
don't think, yeah.
yeah, you just figure everyone's doing it. Like you're like, I'm not like a kingpin, I'm not like a huge
Yeah.
operation, thing like that. But I remember, they got on my back, and there's the dog snarling in my ear, and dripping saliva down my neck. And I think that was the first time that I let out like a sigh of almost relief. Like I almost cracked a smile. Like I still have a really hard time smiling. Like especially like a
Yeah,
true.
they literally saved your life that
Yeah,
day.
I mean, it was like it was like divine providence, it was terrible. It set off like a horrible situation, after that. But at that time, my mother and I had kind of become estranged, but yeah, just because there was a tension. But she was undergoing chemotherapy, or about to, because they had found huge cysts, and she had a hysterectomy, and at that point they were about to start chemo, and because they were about to start chemo, the judge said that the only reason that he let me out on an ankle bracelet for pretrial, because otherwise I would have just started serving my time right there,
Mm.
was was specifically to take care of my mother through this process.
Well, that was really nice of them.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit of mercy in the whole process, and the only places that I was allowed to go was, I had a little job making machines with a guy that my mom knew through the program because she was doing her recovery,
Yep.
and go to meetings. And so I just threw myself into that like super deep. And yeah, I mean, I was out for just short of 9 months. Yeah, and then they were like, yeah, it's time to go. At that point, my mother had basically
Can you
cleared.
imagine that? Being out for 9 months, like changing your life around, and then they're like, okay, it's time. Like, let's
Yeah.
go.
I mean, in the back of your mind, you're like, oh, they'll find a loophole. There's no way they'll
Yeah,
do
like
that.
there's no way they're gonna actually take me away.
Yeah. And there wasn't any wiggle room. Like, I think they did the best they could for me because I did change. Like, when I showed up, I had like dozens of people behind me being like,
Yep.
support
Character
me.
witnesses and stuff.
Yeah. Or just people to stand in the courtroom, even, just to support it. Um, but they took me away. At that point, my mother had gotten through the treatment, and really they'd only given her a 25% chance of surviving this. But I
Wow.
think she was focused on me, I was focused on her, and so neither of us worried too much about our own situation. So survived the pretrial, and ended up being all right to go in and serve my time. And when I went inside, I kept kind of, doing the doing the deed, you know what I mean? Like just kept showing up, and we did meetings inside, and things like that, and connected to a lot of us, a lot of guys in there, you know what I mean? Like I met some really amazing human beings there. I'd say I probably met some of the best people I've ever met in my life.
I hear
Behind
that a lot.
bars. Yeah. I mean, they were solid humans and I was seeking connection. Like probably the biggest reason that I did drugs was because it was kind of social. You know what I mean? Like
We
it
say
was
it all the time. It was some part of a community.
Mm-hmm.
Like we
exactly.
all need community. We're tribal people. And like even though it was drugs, like that was our tribe, like our
Yeah.
drug tribe. Like we
Yeah,
needed
I mean,
that
people
that
were
form
doing
of
grimy
connection.
stuff, but at the same time, it's like just to have people around, like when you're feeling like
Yep.
that, disconnected, and
Were
yeah.
you in jail in Maine?
No, it was federal, so it was
Oh,
yeah. I mean, I served in the county jail about 3 months while I was waiting to be transported. So that was all my main time, and that was all just in county. But most of my time was spent in Pennsylvania.
I
So.
only ask because I had a husband, my first husband that I married in Vegas. He did like 10 years or maybe 8 years in prison in Maine. I didn't know. I was like, oh, maybe you guys know each other, but no.
Well, I mean, I do a lot of advocacy work now with a lot of guys, and most of those guys were state time,
Yeah.
so
Mm.
I mean, if I don't know him, I know lots of other people who I'm sure serve time with them because we do a lot of advocacy work. I
I
spent a
know,
lot
we're
of time.
excited. I want to hear about that.
I
Let's
know.
hear,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
so, so
yeah.
incredible. I love
That kind of
that.
leads up to it.
Yeah.
So I got out
Yeah, how
when I
many
was
years did you do?
3.5.
That's what I thought your mom said. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I got out when I was I had just turned 30 a month before I got out. So I didn't even realize I had turned 30 because I was so focused on something else. So I think in some ways I'm still dealing with all that. Um it's like, oh, you never acknowledge that you turned 30, so now you're 46 and you get to, take it all
Have
in.
another 30 birthday. Let's do it.
Yeah, yeah, essentially. No, it's been crazy trying to swallow it all. But yeah, no, I got out and I went back and I did finish the last semester that I had. It just so happened that I had to do it like right when I checked. It's like, okay, if you don't use it, you're going to lose all your credits. And I was like,
Oh shit.
holy shit. So I literally went back to Ithaca College with the blessing of my PO because he saw what I was trying to do and finished my degree. And mind you, at that point, I'm like 30 or maybe I was 31 at that point, and every kid there is like 18 to like
Yep.
23. I'm just walking around with my backpack hoping nobody noticed me. Like it was, it was interesting to go back there, but it was really humbling. And then I got out and I just started doing like speaking, like small speaking engagements to try to get people to rethink the way that we approach corrections in this country. Just wanted to highlight like what it was that I saw in there, the way the system is structured. The fact of the matter is that, there's so little wiggle room, even with people who totally changed their lives,
Hmm.
everything that came on that. And so that was around 2010, and nobody was talking about it the way they do now. It's not, this is like way pre Meek Mill and Reform and all those
Yep.
nations that have really, managed to make a change on a national level. And so I just started my own little like brand. I called it Incarceration. Made t-shirts, like went and I had like a little web presence. I have a blog that I posted on Tumblr under Incarsa,
Oh my
which
God, I just checked my Tumblr today. That's so funny you say
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I
because
got an email that
Tumblr's
was
still
like,
around.
your Tumblr is gonna go inactive or something if you don't
Oh
verify
no.
your email from like 10 years ago. I'm like, holy shit. It was like my Tumblr from college, and I was like scrolling like
I hope
memory
mine's still
lane.
around because I still send people there, but I think it is. People do check it still, and they're like, "Oh, I read your prison blog." I'm like,
Oh
"Oh
my
man,
God, I love that. Tumblr, what a
yeah,
throwback.
I
I
have no
know,
idea what that even is.
Oh my
yeah, right."
God. It was like a blog, but you could like post pictures too, and you could make your blog like cute, like and aesthetic. Like mine was all black and white.
I'm not a, I don't like the internet in general. So,
Good for you. It's a mind suck, but no, but it was a good way to connect with people
It was.
when I was trying to kind of get the message across. And so I just worked construction jobs and things like that. But then when I was working with one guy, um, I we went to pick up a bunch of materials at his workshop, and it just so happened that his workshop was in the back of this rundown warehouse. But in the front of the warehouse, his father-in-law had started a medically assisted treatment facility. And this was like, Suboxone was just starting there. And so, we could get into a conversation about whether that's good or bad, but it was definitely like engaging some like really cutting edge kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like harm reduction kind of
Yep.
approach to recovery. And the guy asked me, he's like, and I met him, and we started talking. I told, we told him my story like in a nutshell. And he's like, geez, you should work for me. I'm like, really? Okay. So I started doing that and, found that I was pretty good at it. Found my voice and started working in Lewiston of all places. And Lewiston is a town in Maine, for those who don't know, that's, kind of post-industrial. It's definitely run down.
Yep.
It used to be a mill town, like a lot of poverty, a lot of addiction. It's a struggling town, but I fell in love with the town. Like I just
Yep.
felt the people there and the spirit of it. And then after being there for a while, I left and I was like, okay, I want to do something else, and started working at various places. One of them was a kind of a teen center that worked not explicitly, but just by the nature of it, really worked with what we call new Mainers, which is like the immigrant community, and
Mm.
uh, and I just found like a huge connection with those kids because like they were trying to navigate being
Yeah.
in a country where they just felt odd and were very easily seduced by a lot of the imagery that they were seeing of, what's it like to be black in America? It's like, okay, to be black in America, you have to like be tough and you have to like carry a gun and you have to do all these things. And,
Mm.
so I was able to connect with them in a way that just felt really like deep and profound. And then I also started working with other entities that were trying to do prison advocacy, a different kind. Some of it was on the state, federal level, really trying to advocate for changes in laws, the return of parole, which in Maine still, isn't really,
There's no parole in Maine?
no, no,
No way.
yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
at least last I checked, and I used to work really actively on it. Like we were fighting like hell for it. Clemency almost never exists. Like it's a mess up here. And there are some ways that the prison itself has become a lot more humane. Like, one thing I still advocate a lot for is restorative justice, alternatives to incarceration, things like that. But I got to be a part of that conversation. And then I started just joining boards of directors. And one of them that I joined was this organization, Maine Inside Out, which was just, it did amazing work. Like they started by doing theater of the oppressed with young people who were incarcerated in the youth detention facility and got them to tell their stories through theater and to get a bunch of like,
That's so cool.
yeah, I mean, you think about guys who are like holding themselves as tough all day and flexing in front of each other and trying
And
to like
then doing
intimidate each
theater.
other. And they're doing theater and they're doing all this like really vulnerable stuff. Like that's the stuff that really, can make some real impact. And so, that organization was incredibly successful in changing the way that we approach youth incarceration in Maine anyway. I mean, at the time there were like 300 some odd youth who were in the youth detention facility. Right now there's like about 30. Like
Wow.
I really attribute that to the work that was done by this organization and organizations that
Yeah,
we
that's amazing.
partnered with. Yeah, it's really amazing. And so at one point they were like, yeah, we're looking for another co-executive director to work with our current executive director. And so I'd been on the board and I had lived experience of incarceration. I'm like, I'd like to throw my hat in the ring for that. And I ended up getting the position and working in that capacity for several years.
Wow,
And
awesome.
yeah, and then I stepped into this role that I work at currently to try to, also try to interfere with the cycles of violence that we see with young men. I think young men are really struggling. I love that you guys are focusing on men this season or whatnot, because I think we're just seeing young men struggling on like a whole nother level.
Men need healing too. We say it all the
Yeah,
time.
Yeah, it's just
yeah,
that, and
and we don't know what to do with ourselves.
generational trauma of oppression of emotions and thinking that all you have to do is provide and you can't share your emotions openly and that you have to, be the rock and be the provide like
Be the leader, and that's
yeah.
it.
or
And
this
it comes out,
tough
comes
guy.
out sideways, that's when we see young men trying to prove themselves in
Yep.
dangerous ways, and so
Don't
and
cry, wipe those tears, don't be a pussy, like stuff like that.
all of that stuff. And so that's really, that's a lot of the stuff that I'm working on right now is trying to build the organization in a direction that feels like it can help open up vulnerability. It's a 25-year-old organization, so it's been around for a little while, but yeah, but in order to do that, I really need to heal myself, and I'm realizing I got a lot of healing to do still. Um,
Mm.
so
But
hopefully
that can
people
be
still
part
have
of the
to.
process, right? Like they're helping you. Like whatever you're doing and how you're doing it is all part of your process too.
Mm,
100%.
absolutely.
And I
So
believe that you don't have to be like this fit, qualified, perfect specimen of a man to be to be a leader or to even be a role model for young men at all, you know?
yeah,
And I think being, vulnerable about that and not acting like you have your shit together, because I swear I get more like I share so openly about who I am when I have a room full of people. Like, and it's the authenticity in that
Hmm.
that attracts people. It's like,
Relatable.
yeah, it's like you have to be like, yeah, I'm fucked up too. I've done all the fucked up shit. Like, I'm just here, along this
Trying to
path
figure it
with you,
out.
trying to figure it out, doing all these different tools. And what it seems to be is that you're on this path to find all the different things, and then whatever resonates and works for you, that's what you're going to share. It's like we kind of have to like pick and choose. We get to like do all these different things, but there's going to be some things that stick and resonate with us, and that's just like what we're supposed to share. And some stuff doesn't stick, and but you learn and grow through it all.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's the older you get, the harder it is too. So if you can start young, I strongly recommend it. I through all of this, I've come across the information repeatedly that like by 35, like you're pretty much a creature of habit. Like you've just like your brain is just projecting reality onto um onto your day before you're even engaged in it. So you're just kind of like stuck walking through the world. So if you can get on that track earlier in life, like
My
it's
mom tells me that all the time. My
yeah,
mom says it all the time. You're so lucky. You're so lucky you started so early.
Yeah, but I don't think that either. I think the brain and the body is so powerful that if you keep these practices up, no matter how old you are,
Yeah.
that I think that you can create new neural pathways and that you can
you can. I mean,
create,
they've proven,
yeah,
neuroplasticity exists,
Yep.
but it
uh-huh.
does get embedded.
It's
It gets
harder.
much harder, much, much harder.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's definitely harder. It's not, but I mean, it's not easy for anyone, but you're right. It past a certain age point when your brain and your frontal cortex is like fully developed, it's a little bit harder to rewire neural pathways, but it's not impossible. It's not
It's not.
impossible at all.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me to some of these modalities. It's that,
Mm.
what that's what they've found. And so, I've given this presentation to a lot of different audiences. I give a presentation around ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and I've given it to reentry coaches. It's essentially a presentation that I put together during my years working in clinical settings, trying to teach people like this is what you're dealing with. This is how your brain embedded certain processes. This is how your amygdala became, basically rules your life and like made it so hard to for you to, control your behaviors. And then I also in that presentation I make a big point of saying, and community is a big component of how you're able to dislodge that stuff. And that's like a big component of what when I'm bringing it into like, certain spaces, I'm like, you need to connect with community.
Mm.
This is why, there are different reasons you can argue. I do think AA works.
Yeah,
And
we don't ever say it doesn't work.
It's
but
community.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's community. I mean, for
It's the
me, that's the
people
thing
that
that.
certain people that get that fuck up the program. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And we
yeah,
just
but just
gotta
the fact that
touch.
there's people, like
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
in itself is such a big component is that you create a community where things can start to shift. But the other place that I've done kind of this presentation, I add things into it is I gave it is it 2 years running or is it 3 years now? No, I guess it's been 2 years at Maine Fungi Fest. Um, and
Love that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where I add in the component of with neuroplasticity, we can start addressing some of those childhood traumas because it creates,
Yeah.
the ability to dislodge a lot of these memories and creates different pathways for you to be able to think differently, function differently. The hard part is that, the neurons that fire together wire together, right? Like we
Mm-hmm.
all know that. And if things have been wiring together for so long, it's going to take a lot to make them wire in a different direction. But this
Mm.
actually, but what they found with, these modalities of healing is that it becomes much more possible. And that's why, and that's part of the reason. I mean, there are different reasons why people say, oh, I feel like in one night I had 10 years of therapy. You know what I mean? Because just sitting there and talking about your feelings,
Yep.
to a cognitive behavioral therapist, that's not really enough without an extended period of time and a lot of other factors to be able to create new pathways. And
Yep.
so it starts to kind of lubricate the machine a little bit and also illuminate spots that you were blind to before. And
Yeah.
so this is where I find that stuff so useful.
Yeah, I say it all the time. I did EMDR for a year and I don't regret it at all. It 100% worked, but I had found afterwards through breath work, I could have accomplished
Mm,
so much release and relief so much quicker than it taking a year of torment and reprocessing and feeling and living through all those traumatic memories again when I could have just used my breath and fucking had the most epic release that I didn't know how to speak of. Like when you're in therapy and you're like, I don't know why I am the way that I am. I'm just fucked up and I feel all this pain and certain things like I can't do or this or that. And you don't know how to communicate that. But in breath work, it's like you just, your body releases what it needs to without having to say any type of words at all, which is why I just love breathwork so much. And we obviously both just had to teach it, like, had to teach it.
Yeah, I mean, the body keeps the score really changed the
Yep,
entire game once we started recognizing just how smart the body is and also how the
absolutely.
body holds memory. And that's the thing is like you can sit there and you can go and somebody can tell you exactly why you're so fucked up. And
Hmm.
that doesn't mean you can get out of it because it's
Exactly.
lodged in the body.
It's like,
Yeah,
cool. So now what do I do with that?
yeah, you just
Thanks
intellectualize
for
it.
letting me
That's what
know.
you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that tends to be, it's not that it's a dead end, but it's a very slow process. And, the results are mixed. I mean, I will say the results can be mixed too with these other modalities as
Of
well.
course. Of course.
But the more weapons we have in our arsenal, the more likely we're going to be able to find something that actually works for us. You know?
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's what as I said, as I said, from
And
when
we're
we
this
started
that's what this is
everything.
about. Like we're big believers in not one shoe size fits all. Like whatever works for us might not work for you. Whatever was working for you might not work for us. Whatever works for her might not work for me. Like until you figure out what that is that works for you and what resonates with you and what has given you the most relief and happiness and like this just like stillness, like that's when you know you found it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I don't think it's just one thing, I mean,
Yeah.
I think just doing a bunch of stuff. I also will say after some of the experiences that I've had lately, it's nice to have somebody who can guide you and be like, "Oh, you did this. Maybe you should try this next," versus just like trying to do all of it.
Mm,
Sometimes you think you're doing good and it turns out that you're actually, reversing some of the progress you made. So yeah, I don't know. I think I love that this stuff is becoming more widely accepted because
mm-hmm.
now there are practitioners who actually can guide you through the process and be like, okay, do this now, rather than, because when it was in the shadows more, it became much harder to find somebody like you couldn't just say, hey, I've been utilizing this to try to heal. Can somebody guide me to the next thing? And now you
Yep.
can use internet forums to speak with other individuals who are trying to heal themselves through these practices. I mean, it's still not fully accepted or not fully legal, but at least we're in a place where they're deprioritizing. Hopefully they'll deschedule. Hopefully
Yeah,
we'll move in
absolutely.
directions. But
I
you
have
know,
hope. I think it's
yeah,
our
I mean,
future for sure.
I have a lot of hope too. At the same time, I think where it's at right now is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Wait. something that I've kind of seen with cannabis is that once it became totally commercialized, it lost some of the spiritual components of it,
Mm,
and so in some way, like part of me wants it to be totally legalized and everything like totally available, and then other parts of me likes that there's um kind of that it exists in a place where um, there's a lot of scrutiny.
mm,
Scrutiny is held by the community and not by an external entity. It's not the government that's regulating it. Fortunately, it's other individuals who are practitioners who are like, hey, you're giving our work a bad name because you're acting, unscrupulously or whatnot.
mm,
So those conversations that are existing within the healing community, I feel like we're taking care of those things on our own in a way that just if it becomes fully legalized, it may lose some of that. And the whole that's the thing, like how the whole medical field kind of works is that it tends to be regulated externally. And personally, I'd rather have, practitioners, talking to one another and trying to figure out
mm.
the best modalities rather than having an external entity. So I think we're actually in a really good place right now with a lot of this stuff. I guess my hope is that it becomes accessible for more people.
Mm. I agree.
I think it'll get there.
Yeah.
It's on
And
its
I
way,
and
for
I
sure.
think that that's, talking about AA in the community, and what we always say is that I'm so grateful I had that time that I had in recovery and learned what I learned. And, I had like the anger and the resentment with like the cult piece of it and feeling like brainwashed and like all of that. But like I needed it. I needed exactly that. And then when I was ready to leave it, the part that I get the most upset about, and what Taylor and I, is the people and the shame of leaving, that like, oh my god, if you leave this
Trying
thing,
different
like
things.
there's
Yeah.
Yeah.
no way that you could do it. Like
You're gonna relapse
there's
and
only this
die and
one
this and
way.
that. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that that part can be taken out because it's such a great solid foundation. It's like easy. It's like beginner
Yeah, it
spirituality, just
saved
kind
my
of
life.
tipping your toe into
Yeah.
that. And if you're a relief seeker, right, like we said that we are, we're going to want to go elsewhere and grow. And just like, this one medicine journey that you did, and I'm sure, I think you might have done one or something before that too, that you're going to continue to seek that. If you felt good doing that and had experiences, you're going to continue to go out and, find those practices that work for you. And some
Yeah.
of them aren't, and some of them are. And I think that the people just need to not judge, right? That's like the biggest part.
Well, I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys have talked about the fact that, Bill W's, was an active user and
Yes. And they talk about psychedelics in the book.
yeah,
Belladonna is a psychedelic.
Belladonna is a yeah, is a psychedelic
Belladonna
treatment.
therapy, they literally talk about it in Bill's story. He was on the belladonna, like it's crazy. And he was in all of Leary's like things with LSD, like back in like all of the transcripts. Like there's so many things
yeah,
that, he was a part of.
That got lost in translation over time.
yeah,
Fear and control. That's why like I believe 100% it has a purpose, it serves its purpose. It is a end all be all for some people, and that's beautiful. Like I have seen my aunt has 20 something years in AA, and she's like gonna die in AA. I truly believe that. And I love that for her, truly, but sometimes we'll butt heads because she doesn't like that I left, and she always thinks like this and that, and I'm like, but do you see the way that I'm living? Right? Like I still am in service of others. I still put God above all. I still do right. Like, right? I still have all these principles in my life that I practice. It just taught me how to live those principles. It taught me those principles. And for that, I'll forever be grateful. Forever be grateful.
absolutely. And that's mostly where I am. I mean, it was great to walk in, to that meeting today. It in some ways it felt like home. It
Absolutely.
readjusted me in a way that I really needed to. And I think I'm going to continue to like, venture in from time to time and we'll see. It might become like a regular thing again.
Yeah, I mean, you could be of service. Like you have a beautiful message and you have, positive impact in your community. And that's just another way of reaching people. So I would
Yeah.
never be like, "Oh my God,"
Yeah.
never. We would
Yeah.
never.
No, absolutely. But I think it is important. I mean, it literally it was such a big part of Bill W.'s story. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is one of the things that really knocked loose what he had, and the fact that it isn't included. I just think it's a shame. Bill Hicks, the comedian Bill Hicks, like his biography or documentary around his life, and talking about how he was actively in AA his entire life, but once, yeah, I think it was once a year he would go and do a psychedelic journey, and that's how he would reinforce his sobriety, and he was able to die sober. And I would argue, and this is, some people would be like, that's not sober. I'd say, like, that's sober as fuck,
Yeah.
man. Like,
Yeah.
like that he really
I
he
believe that too.
lived life. So
100%.
awesome.
Well, yay. We're so glad that you came on and shared your story and your message with our community. I'm so excited. We just can't wait to have more men on. We only
Yeah.
had my husband. My husband was the only one that's been on this season. I'm like, we need more men.
I had a couple. Taylor, there's a
Yes,
couple.
we
We
need,
have a couple
well,
in
we
our
have a couple
community.
lined up for sure.
Well, let me
They
know. I'm sure I have people in my community that I could send your way to.
send them our way.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Um, if there is one thing that you could share, just like maybe your most valuable lesson that you've learned over your journey, like a favorite quote or favorite piece of advice, what
Mm.
would it be for the men out there and the women?
You had warned me that you were going to ask me that. I was hoping that it would just come to me that it would just come to me, but man, I wish I had planned for it. I don't know. I mean, I, I I guess I will say something that, because it's probably more profound to me than it is to anybody who's listening, because other people will find it on their own, or they've already found it, which is, there's something bigger that actually is holding us all together.
Hmm.
And for me to say that, I don't think that people would, hopefully you can hear it in my story. Like, literally, that fear of death had me by the throat, and that has eased. And that situation today with that God's app of, like, stepping into a meeting and seeing this person who I had no idea was in the program, and of all places for him to be, happened to be in the same meeting as me. And we don't live in the same town. We live several, I mean, it just, yeah, I mean,
Too many coincidences to not be a coincidence.
came to believe,
Yep.
that may be it. So, having that faith, and knowing that it is available to you. But it's pretty hidden. It's hidden under a lot of noise. And so, I'd say, spend your time, do the process, peel back the onion, get ready for some hard shit. I, you know, but I don't know, the universe is starting to talk to me a little bit, and that's pretty amazing. So little by little, and I don't know, you'll get there. I hope we'll all get there. I believe we will.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so, 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 so much.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
We're
We're gonna
excited.
we're gonna
I'm
close
excited to
this.
see all the people and the youth that you continue to help. Thank you for doing the work that you do. We're going to close out the same way that we began, one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly. We're going to expel the energy out. Big, deep inhale in through the nose. And the exhale, we just let it go. Thank you.
Thank you, Sacred Rebels.
Thank you for
See you next
listening.
week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to what we have to say. It means the world. As always, we want to end this episode by reminding you that we are not medical professionals and we are not giving any type of medical advice. We are simply sharing our experience and solutions.
We are here with the intentions of reminding you that you are never alone and that everyone's healing journey is unique to the individual. Make sure to follow us on all social media platforms to stay updated. Stay well, Sacred Rebels. See you next time.